Welcome to the Comeback Code, the podcast that explores the power of resilience, determination, and comeback stories. Hosted by Justin Gratzfeld. Show features inspiring individuals who have faced incredible challenges and through their unwavering perseverance and willpower have managed to rise above their circumstances and achieve greatness. Whether you're looking for motivation, health advice, or just an uplifting story, the Comeback Code has you covered. So get ready to be inspired because it's time to unlock the secrets of the comeback and unleash your own potential. This is the Comeback Code. Hey, Claire, how are you doing?
I'm good, Justin. How are you? Thank you so much for having me today.
I appreciate it taking time out of your day to jump on and help the listeners and uh, find out about you and your journey and everything. So,
Yeah, for sure. I'm very just humbled and grateful to be here today. So thanks.
yeah. So, one of my first questions is like, how did you get to this point in your career and like some of the things that you've went through to get you here? Can you tell you in your
So
story?
yeah, for sure. So just a little bit of background. I've been in the fitness nutrition space for about 15 years. And my start, my mom would joke that I've probably been in this space since I was like 8 years old. When I was the kid who was asking for like ankle weights and a little mini trampoline for Christmas, and my girlfriend, my little friends were all asking for Barbies and little Corvette cars or whatever. I was asking for like exercise equipment. So she jokes that I've kind of been in this world like since I was a kid. Um, but my passion really began to develop in high school. I had a really incredible mentor in high school, and I was as an athletic trainer. Um, there's those people in the world that numbers just click and they make sense, and that is not me. That is like so far from me. But for me, the human body, like the anatomy and just how the body moves, how the brain functions, how the digestive system functions, that kind of stuff just like clicks. It makes sense to me. Um, and so as an athletic trainer, that's really where a lot of my passion for, man, this stuff is fascinating. What can is there something I can do with that? Right. And so I had a really amazing mentor when I was an athletic trainer in high school who really helped me cultivate the vision for actually being able to do something, whether it was an athletic trainer full time, like at the college level, or professional sports. I kind of knew that wasn't really my jam. Um, but that kind of set me on that initial path. So I played sports, soccer, ran track, and that kind of thing. But as I was prepping to decide what do I want to do with my life for college, I came across a pamphlet that was talking about occupational therapy, and I was like, this, like, that's the thing. That's what I want to do. I want to help people. This is my mindset back then. I want to help people like get back to just their activities of daily living. Like, you meet a gentleman who has had a stroke and he played piano his whole life and he can no longer use like the right side of his body, right? And so my passion really started dealt. I'm like, man, that I want to help. I've always wanted to help people. And so that kind of pushed me into the college world, and I started taking classes, and I did a few years of pre-professional coursework for occupational therapy. And I'll talk a little bit about like how I ended up not following through on that, but I genuinely believe, for me, um, I can have a plan A and a plan B and a plan C, but God's like, no, just like hang on a second. And that's just my belief that He has a bigger plan for me. And so fast forward to where I am today, I decided to dive into personal training while I was trying to figure out my further along college plan. And I kind of just did it as a side thing, and absolutely fell in love when I really made that connection of being able to help people on the preventative side versus after injury has already occurred. And that was what really just pushed me forward to like dive into it, learn more, get certifications, research. I'm the nerd who like loves to read medical journals and whatever I can get my hands on. And so that's kind of where I am now. And again, I've been a personal trainer, and I've done boot camps, and I've owned companies and done nutrition coaching for many years now. And it's just what makes sense for me. It's my way of serving, my way of helping people. And my hope is that, I don't know, maybe I leave this earth a little bit better than I found it, and have made a positive impact in people's lives. So yeah.
No, that's awesome. I have a very similar story and like how like I started competing in wakeboarding in contests at 3 years old, and
Wow.
like my first world championships was when I was 10, and like we started like I was always into sports and competing, and like we had a my sixth birthday, like I got a bike or whatever, but like when I turned 10, we got a trampoline, and that was like my
Hmm.
life. And like I practiced all my tricks. We had a rope that was attached to a, a tree, and then I'd practice the wakeboard tricks on the trampoline every day. And my dad
Oh my
ran a camp
gosh.
and all this stuff. And so I was
That's
always
so cool.
in there. And then, but I ended up getting like too many concussions and permanent headaches. So I kind of like shifted. I was coaching wakeboarding and was like a provincial coach, and but I was struggling mentally with the pain and things. I was like, why? What's the
Mm,
purpose of me being here? So I kind of one day I was 16, and I was like, well, I think my purpose is to helping people. So he's like, I'm never gonna feel good, so I might as well make other people feel good. So that's kind of like always been each job that I've done, if it's firefighting or I took massage therapy and kinesiology and
hmm.
EMR and all these different things. And now nutrition, it's always been in some form of trying to help and serve others to give me purpose. So I
Yeah.
appreciate you helping people like that and having the same kind of driving force.
Thank you. Yeah. It's always amazing to connect with people that are like-minded and have that just a deep desire to help people with the gifts and the talents, that we each have been given. So very cool. Yeah.
Yeah, what's been some of your biggest challenges and struggles throughout your life as you've been coming to the point that you are today?
Yeah. So I've given this a pretty good amount of thought, and that, I have those big kind of aha moments, like challenge things that I know I've overcome. But I'll be honest, one of the challenges in my life is that I feel like I haven't really had major challenges to overcome, if that makes sense. I know that might seem a little like silly or whatever. I know your story and you've had some insane challenges you've had to overcome. And when I reflect on my life, I'm like, man, like I've had a really great family. I've blessed with, a physical self that is functional, and I haven't really had to overcome insane adversities. And then when I really start to deep dive and look inward, and I've been doing a lot of that in the last couple of years, one of the things that stands out to me is as men and women, but I'm going to speak mostly from the female perspective because I am one, and that's primarily who I work with. But I feel like the mindset around how I look, how much I weigh, do people like me? Where's the acceptance coming from? The approval coming from? I've struggled with that for my entire life. I look back on from middle school, elementary school, high school, you name it. I've felt like I've had this proverbial like ball and chain of a scale like attached to me that I'm just like dragging around at all times. And always thinking all eyes are on me. You walk in any space, like everybody's looking at me, when it's so ridiculous when you think about it. Everybody else is thinking the same thing about themselves, that ego piece of us. And so that as I consider it a challenge because it's like this constant thing. It's always been this constant thing in my mind, and never feeling good enough, never feeling um like I'm enough. And so when you try to help and serve other people, helping them live a healthier lifestyle, be better, you really have to start holding that mirror up in front of yourself and recognizing the things that you're sharing or recommending or working with other people on. Uh, you got to work on it yourself. And so that's been a big piece of my journey in the last few years, is really tapping into that. And along that pathway, the biggest physical adversity that I've overcome was about 17, yeah, well, yeah, 17 years ago. I was young, 23 years old or so, and I hated I didn't love what I saw in the mirror when I looked in the mirror. I didn't like the way my body looked. I wanted to do something about it. And so I decided to get breast implants. Many women out there, I'm sure if you're listening to this, like have them currently, whatever. So I made that decision. I had them for 10 years, and I'm going to super fast forward, but they ended up making me really sick towards the end of my 10th year with them. And I decided to have them removed. And it wasn't just a physical removal of this thing that I had decided to put in my body, right? there was so much more that came with it. I didn't know that at the time, but I began working through that. I've been working through that over the past 7 years, really. And I have really had to, again, hold that mirror up in front of myself and reflect on what were the stories I was telling myself then that made me make that decision, right? And then what are the stories I'm telling myself now? And are those, things that I would say if I had a child, or things I would say to my best friend or to you, whatever, like, what are those words that I'm actually talking about myself to myself? And so really starting to focus on, how do I learn that self-acceptance, like the approval, instead of seeking that outward approval from other outside sources. It has been hard AF to learn to seek my own approval first. And I think in the fitness industry, in particular, nutrition industry, everything's very vanity driven, and there's nothing wrong with that. We all want to look good naked in the mirror. I don't care who you are. When you stand in front of that mirror, you want to feel good, right? And I think there's a line that I have really struggled with crossing, where it's in the extremes. And so I would say, as far as the biggest challenges of overcome, it's a mindset around how I feel about myself, what I experience when I look in the mirror, and then the words that I tell myself about myself. Um, and I don't know if I'll ever actually arrive to a place where I like really am locked in on that and really feel like I've arrived, but I do genuinely feel like gotten to a place where, man, like I catch myself when I'm being rude or ugly to myself. And I catch myself when challenges arise that maybe I'm working with a client on, that I'm like, ooh, that's a mirror moment, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I would say that those are physically, like the implant world, like that was a very, very challenging time. So there was a physical adversity, and then the mental side of it, the mindset side of it, really has been the biggest thing through my life. So yeah.
I appreciate you sharing all that and stuff. And I like to tell everyone on each podcast, like they go through their story and everything. And um, there's everyone's went through something different in their life, and it's kind of like pain. Like pain is subjective, and you could be feeling extreme pain and it could be chronic pain all the time. So you're more adjust to feeling that, and it doesn't feel as bad. But say if you give that same pain to someone else, it might be overwhelming. But it's
Right.
kind of like when we are dealing with these internal struggles, so maybe like my story, or someone that's just not having, like, they had an easier life when you think of it in theory, but they've had to deal with that mentally in the same way, and they haven't been able to adjust. So they are stressed, and they're probably just as stressed as someone that's dealing with a huge factor, but it's unique to each individual. So they're feeling just as bad. So not to discount your pain just because there's something you feel inadequate because it doesn't measure up to someone else's story, because everyone is subjective to their own thoughts, and you're going to feel the most that you've ever felt in your life, just like that other person. So
Right. Yeah.
don't
No, that's a
discount
good point.
yourself.
It's almost like that. What is the term? The thief of comparison.
Hmm.
And it's kind of it's the flip side of it, the thief of comparison, when we're always looking at like people's Insta feed or whatever, like, oh, that person's doing amazing. Oh gosh, I wish I was them. This is like the thief of comparison, or the comparison. Yeah, there we go. Of like, oh, I haven't had a hard enough life. Like I should struggle more so that I can feel valid in my like overcoming of adversity. And it's kind of are we allowed to cuss on here?
Yeah.
It's kind of a mind fuck, and when you really like sit down, pen to paper, especially when I started like with therapy, and I'm a huge proponent of therapy, by the way, and being vulnerable. I'm not a proponent of it, but it had become a proponent of becoming way more vulnerable. So, but yeah, it's just an interesting, the mindset is really, maybe one day we'll figure it out, right?
And the
Maybe one
worst
day.
part about like judging yourself on this other person is you feel even more inadequate, and accentuating the problem even further and further, to a point that you're in even worse headspace. So you
Yeah.
just have to like trying to figure out to deal with that, and just finding out like, hey, you are worth it. These are big struggles, and just coming to reality that this is something in your life, but there's also good things, and trying to focus on the positives and gratitude in your life to actually accomplish things, and changing the mindset,
Yeah.
because we've been how long were we stuck inside with COVID? That
Yeah, two
like
years.
yeah, and then like I hear Canada, it's like 2/3 of people are depressed. That's a insane number. So as long as we can help lift someone else up, you're changing someone else's life for the better, and everyone's pretty much needs it now. So just
Yeah,
sharing your
we
story
need
and
community.
being vulnerable.
Yeah. Thank
So
you. I appreciate it.
mm-hmm. I love like you've went through a lot of things that I have been in like the female perspective. Um, what are some of the things that maybe you could tell my listeners that helped you get over some of those issues of like the like the body side and everything?
Yeah. Again, people, I've been throwing the word mindset around, and honestly, like, I feel like the word is overused, to be honest. I really do. And I'll probably say it a handful of times more, but whatever. I, I really just I had to hold up a mirror and start to face the hard things that I didn't want to face. I had to actually look inward, and it's just freaking hard to do. I don't like it. Most people don't like it, that going inward type of thing, but um, I knew that what had gotten me to whatever point in life, at that point in life, wasn't going to get me where if I wanted to make a change, if I wanted to shift and I wanted to get to a different, better, more well-rounded, just better in general place, what got me to that point wasn't going to get me to where I wanted to go. Right. And so when I started looking at what I was taking in, so what TV shows I was watching, what music I was listening to, podcasts, books, people I was around, I had to make a shift. I had to kind of really start looking at, like, okay, I mean, just listening to like rap music or whatever. I don't know. I'm just trying to think of, like, listening to country music. That was one of the ones I used to listen to all the time. And I'm like, this shit's kind of depressing a lot of times. And then it's either depressing, or on the other side of it's like talking about this perfect love relationship thing. And I'm like, okay, look, like, that wasn't fueling me. It was making me feel worse about myself. And so, nothing against country music. I still listen to it, but I had to pinpoint these little things that were triggering my negative mindset and triggering me to be held back, like holding myself back. And so I don't believe that I do believe that everyone has a choice in how you feel, or excuse me, how you perceive, right? The outside, whatever's occurring, your experiences in life. And then you can choose how to feel and how about that situation. And so I made those decisions to take in good things, positive, either good podcasts. I started shifting to podcasts versus like fiction books that were like CSI style or whatever. I really shifted a lot away from like watching just random TV shows and reading instead. And so when I started to pull into my world more positive things, things that were serving me, things that were educating me, things that I felt like I could utilize to help other people, is when a lot of that started shifting. And so I challenge you guys that are listening, to look at your circle. And I don't just mean like the 5 people around you. Yes, that's super key. But everybody talks about that. Also, look at what you're fueling your system. Are you watching the news all the time? That's soul sucking, if you ask me. If you want to stay up and up on current events, that's great. But I don't think it's like wake up in the morning, listen to it and then right when you go to bed, listening to it again. And then what are the conversations that you're having with people? What are the books you're listening to? The podcast you're listening to, right? There were a few that I kind of had in my repertoire that I started again comparing myself to, like, these insanely high level humans that I'm like, I'm never going to be that person. Like, and I started getting down on myself. They're great podcasts. They just weren't great for me. And that's a shift that we have to be willing to make, to have the best positive experience of our own life, instead of comparing ourselves to others. So that would be my challenge, is to really look at what what the input is occurring, and you have a decision of what that is, and you can choose to take that in or not, and to shift that. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you really only have so much bandwidth, and what do you want to fill your life with? Do you want to be, like you're saying, the news and this and all these negative people, or and finding different things? And like it was kind of cool. I did 75 hard.
Oh man.
I'm not saying it was the best thing for me physically, but mentally it was amazing on the fact that it showed me how much time in the day you actually have and how many things you can accomplish and like
Mhm.
prioritizing your day, and you have so much more time than you really think of it, but you just are on your phone, you're watching TV, and like doing all that stuff takes away from your relationship where you're not spending with them, and then both of you are disconnected and you're both getting zoned into these things, and it changes who you are, and these kind of drift apart from each other. But I was
Yeah.
listening to you a little earlier, and you're talking about like your opinion on yourself and how you look and whatnot, and I I've went through something similar, and I had I think I got down to like 9% body fat, and like I was 200 and what was it 209 pounds, and everything, I just looked at myself and I just saw like me being fat and this ugly
Mm.
and all this stuff, and like there's this distorted principle of my mind and how
Mm.
you can just you literally can transform what you see. Like I looked at my arms and they looked like super large and distorted, and not saying to do this, but I was for my like brain infection, my neurologist said I should try like mushrooms, and
I'm a
what
proponent. I'm a proponent. So go ahead. Yeah,
um
you're good.
so I had done these, and I went and I was looking in the mirror at myself, and I didn't recognize who was in the mirror because I had such a distortion before I
Mm.
took, and I literally looked like an hour. I was just like, what the hell? Like, I look so skinny and like all these things. And the thing is your body can and mind can put tricks on you, and you have this distorted view of yourself. You could be the thinnest, and the only reason I actually acknowledged this was so I was listening to Jason Phillips, and he was saying that
Mm.
he's like was like anorexic and like has this opinion where he thinks he's super fat and like all this thing. I'm like, dude, this he's shredded. I'm like, what the hell is wrong with this? So I was thinking about this while I'd eaten these things, and then I went in the mirror. I started just mentally started thinking about this, and I literally couldn't recognize myself. And it's crazy just to see how much we kind of torture ourselves and put all these pressures and like
In our
magazines that you
in
have to
our
look this
conscious
way.
state. Like in that
Yeah.
conscious state. Yeah. Like how we, yes, yeah. It's like that conscious like decision to be like, no, I don't like what I see in my when I look in that mirror. Yeah.
Mm. And it really puts an aspect of you can literally there could be an orange on the table and it's actually a banana. Like that's how much you can just change your mind just fucks with you so much that it changes the actual look and structure of something you see. And if you're
Yep.
in a bad headspace, that is what's causing you. And that's why you get all some people that are like anorexic and like 90 pounds and they think they're super overweight. And you got to realize that you need to find either help or something, or try to look yourself in a positive manner and see that you are worth it and that you are thin and that you are an awesome person and an individual. I don't know if you've experienced anything like
Yeah.
that, but it's crazy what the mind can do.
It is that, and again, that's I said that earlier. The mind, like the human body in general, is so incredibly fascinating to me. But the brain, like no pun intended, but it blows my mind. Like it is incredible its capacity. And I just think those who get it, like get it, and they want to help other people transcend and like understand it and get it. But it's a journey. I think that each person has to go on, and I think it's a timing in life, whether it's what you go through, whether it's what um hard things versus great things. I think it's also a maturity thing, different age times in our different ages, different decades that we're living through. um but we do have the power. I agree. I do think that we have the power of choice and control in some capacity. but I absolutely will not negate the fact that those who deal with body dysmorphia issues and really struggle and don't see what is actually in front of them really could benefit from counseling therapy for sure. So if you're someone listening that's like, oh, that's me, I can just fix it myself. You may not be able to, and that's okay. And that's what professionals are there for. So definitely seek help, seek advice. I'll throw a little nod to psilocybin. Yeah, learn about it. Just research it, guys. That's all. I'll leave it at that. I'm not gonna dive into all of that. But yeah, definitely a fan of how it can shift the brain's capacity to regenerate neurons. Yeah.
Yeah.
I won't dive into
Yeah.
that.
I pretty much like when I first did it, I went from having about 10 seconds of being able to walk to, what was it? 2 weeks later, I was walking with a walker a block from, so it
That's
is crazy how
incredible.
your neurons realign, but it's definitely not for everyone and whatnot.
Yeah.
But
I was thinking, it's funny that you brought up this whole, like, how you looked in the mirror and you saw this completely different person. I had a conversation with a client literally today, middle of class. I teach outdoor group classes and middle class, and she comes running by me and she's like, oh, my thighs. And I'm like, what? She's like, oh, just like, I don't know, just my thighs. Like, I gotta work on these inner thighs. I'm like, girl. And let me just preface by saying she has crushed it in the last like 4 6 months. She's gone from like 8 10 pound dumbbells up to 20 pound dumbbells on the regular. She has lost weight. She's toned. I mean, she looks, as I see, I'm like, girl, you have done some serious work. Like, you've put in the work, you've shown up, you've made this happen. Like, I'm just your facilitator in this process. And she said, yeah, God, you're right. But every time I look in the mirror, all I see is these, I hate these inner thighs. That's all she sees. And I'm like, you remember when we first met, we first were talking, you were like, they literally rub together. She's like, yes. Oh, they don't rub together like that anymore. Right. But all she sees when she looks in the mirror is like, this ugly, like a distorted version, her previous. That's what she said. She's like, all I see when I look at myself is that person back then. And it's a hard thing to get out of that habit, to get out of that practice. And sometimes having that outside person who believes in you, who sees the how you really are, can help you, facilitate that part of your journey. But it's interesting you brought that up, because guys, girls, all alike, I think we all deal with that in some way.
Imagine what you could do if you could control that. So instead you can see yourself looking good and changing so that, and how much happier you'd be. And if you could control that and figure out how to manipulate that. So I still have moments where I look in the mirror, especially when I'm doing like a bulk. Like right now, I went and tried to do like a bulk, so I put on like 20 pounds to try to build some more muscle and stuff. And then I'm just like, oh. And then I like have to like do some mime practice and I'm like, okay, now I look good. But then like the next day I might wake up and I'm like, fuck. Why is that? Like, why do I look
start the process all over
and
again.
I gotta like mentally like prepare myself. So it's no matter where you're at.
Absolutely.
So
to that point, yeah, and I know we were talking about this earlier before we hit record, but to that point of like, you wake up the next day and you're like, I'm back in this headspace. It's like, if you want to go out into public, you have to put clothes on every day, right? So you get into the habit of putting clothes on every day to go out into public. It's almost the same thing with that, with what we're telling ourselves and how we're with the input factor, like what are we inputting? But you have to, the habit side of it is what really, small tiny little habits over time is what will get you eventually to that place where it is not so daunting and so like hard to do, and that feeling of impossible. I'll tell just a quick story if you don't mind. I was a competitive bodybuilder years ago, and I did that for about 3 years, handful of shows. But after my very, very first show, I didn't do my first show properly. Let's just say that. I stepped on stage at like 97 pounds. Granted, I'm 4'11", like I'm not a giant human, but I stepped on stage at 47, I mean at 97 pounds with like, a 4-pack. Like, I've never seen my body look like that. It was incredible in my mind, but I didn't transition out of that. Competition after that first competition, I didn't have like a slow transition out of that. I went from seeing this insane level of lack of body fat to, okay, now I'm back to life again. And I ended up what they call it a post-show blues, like almost like postpartum blues. I ended up with depression. I'd never battled that before, and it was a very slow journey and process to find myself again through that, and learn to love the body, the normal body that I was in. And one of the things that helped me the most, so if you're someone who struggles with like learning to love yourself, learning to love your body, one of the things that helped me the most was, before I would go to eat, like whatever it was I was eating, I would ask myself, like, does this food elevate my being, my capacity for life? I was given one of these bodies, right? Is what I'm about to eat or drink or whatever, is it elevating me to a place where I want to go? Is it a positive input factor? And what it did is, I had the little note of my fridge and my pantry and all these little places. It just helped me become more intentional with my decision making around food so that I could find a healthier balance with food. Does that make sense?
Hmm.
And it took a long time. It really did. It took a long time to shift that, but it was such a big helper that I still find myself asking that question periodically. Like, does that food elevate my being, my purpose, whatever phase of life I'm in? So just I wanted to throw that little tidbit out there for any help to people out there.
Yeah. So, one of my next questions is, you've went through this struggle and experienced a lot, and you help a lot of clients with this as well. What are some special, like maybe techniques or strategies that will help them get over some of these issues and things that they should work on to try to better themselves and live healthier and happier?
Yeah. Justin, I wish I had the magic answer for that. um, I do. I wish there was a magical pill that I could just be like, just take this thing and you'll achieve whatever you want to achieve. Um, I feel like in this moment, the thing that comes up the first and foremost for me, technique wise, is the habits, is small, like very small, minute changes that you can have miniature wins along the way. And I know it sounds like super cliche or whatever, but I'm literally talking about, maybe it's like an easy habit. Maybe it's like drinking 70 ounces of water, half your body weight in ounces of water. Maybe it's just that. And doing that, and my philosophy is more often than not. I do not believe in perfection. I am a big my one of my favorite things, as I was, progress over perfection. And so when I look at the course of my week or even the course of my day, like, am I doing the thing that's going to help me move forward on my goal or just positive and healthy life? Am I doing it more often than not? And so that's kind of my check-in point. And sometimes I'll even print out like a calendar and just do a check mark of whatever the habit or the goal, the habit that I'm working on is. And when I have gotten an entire 30 days of like more check marks than not, then I continue that habit and I'll add something else. We talked about this earlier, like habit stacking. And sometimes, y'all, sometimes that takes 1 month, sometimes it takes 6 months. And a few years ago, when I was starting to work with a therapist and really deep diving into like how I was viewing myself and the things, the thought, the words I was telling myself, I give the example of 6 months because it took me 6 months to get a more often than not calendar of talking positively about myself and catching myself in those negative like narratives and those negative tripwires. Because that, just like a tripwire, like it can offset everything in your life, everything in your day, as soon as you flip that mind into that negativity. So if it's, start with something small you know you can do, consistently and like, yes, I got it. I did the thing. Okay, now add something, one tiny other thing. And it can be physical, it can be mental, but when it's even a physical thing you're adding in, drinking your water, getting your 10K steps in, it does something to the mind. It does something to help shift that. You can't force that shift a lot of times, but I think in conjunction with doing the physical, the mental comes with it. So that's I don't have any other magic answer except choosing like one minor thing at a time, and slowly. It's about the journey. It's about the process. It's not about the end goal and destination.
Yeah, I think it's about moving with intention and
Yes.
figuring out if you just float through your life and don't think about anything, eventually you don't accomplish anywhere. And you could go in any direction. It could be bad, good, whatnot. So if you can maybe process some goals, maybe, and like start off with very small wins to try to build a foundation, and not think of things as you failing, but hey, you binge ate yesterday and you're upset about it. Well, it's a win that you binge ate because you realize to yourself that you actually are doing it. So realizing the problem gives you awareness so you don't do it in future action. So even if you're doing it, you're still aware of it, and that's a habit, that's a win. And just changing that mindset of, hey, I failed, to, hey, this is a win, this is a win, this is a win. And eventually have enough pebbles, you can make a mountain, and the goal is accomplished at the end. It's kind of like when you see the
Yeah.
goal of like, hey, I need to lose 100 pounds, and it's like, holy frick, how the
Yeah.
hell am I gonna get there? I'm like,
Right.
I've been doing this for a week. I haven't lost any weight. What's going on? Oh, maybe I should just give up. But it's, you get that one win after another, and next thing you know, you look back and you're like, holy shit, who is that person? I'm not the same person I am anymore. So
Yeah, and having a coach or an accountability person in your life, in your world, who can help you reflect on those wins, because when you have a sucky day, you forget about those wins. And so having someone in your corner, I think every good coach has a coach, every good business person has a business mentor. Highly recommend that. They help you see those wins that you've had along the way when you struggle to see them for yourself. Yeah.
yeah, and almost every Facebook Live I do, I end with this like, hey, um, you're struggling with this, and guess what? Over half the population struggling with this issue. So if you can find some kind of accountability, if it's a friend, a family member, someone in your group, just someone in general, and reach out, they're probably dealing with the same problems and too scared to actually reach out and take that first step. So if you're able to have the courage to take that small step forward and reach out, you can be changing someone's life for the better, and then they can help you too.
Mhm.
And next thing you know, you have accountability, and things start to roll faster and faster, and eventually you've changed their life, you're at a better spot in your life, and people around you are changing, and you're creating a whole new lifestyle for everyone else around you, not just yourself. So when you are doing
Mm.
this journey, you're not just affecting yourself, you're affecting everyone around you, and they're seeing the progress.
Yes, I love that. It's like a little call to action of getting outside of ourselves when we can help other people, and remembering that we are all way more alike than we are different. We're just fearful of what other people are going to think about us when they're just as fearful of what they think we're going to think about them. So I love that, Justin. That's really cool. I love that.
Yeah. And then one of my last questions is,
Yeah.
what is some of your goals that you're trying to accomplish? Maybe it's career, personal, and whatnot, and maybe some action steps that you might be trying to do.
Yeah, I'm in a interesting section of life. I'm turning 40 this year. Every time I say it out loud, I have an adverse reaction to it. So, I right now, my it's not really even a goal, is to actually not focus on a goal. So I know that might sound weird, but my whole life has been like, what's the next thing? What's the next thing? I got to get to the next thing, and like making the steps in the plan and getting there, and just this constant like um constant chaos, constant like, the busier I am, the faster I'm going towards the thing, whatever the thing was. And right now, my goal is really learning harmony in my work and life, social, health, all the things, finding harmony amongst them instead of diving. So I tend to live in the extremes. And so learning to kind of find that Goldilocks, just right kind of space. I don't believe that there's a true balance that actually exists. Like, I mean, even if you stand on one foot, like all the little muscles in your foot is still in constant slight movement. But I like the idea of harmony amongst the things in your life. And so I am being more intentional in my time that I'm giving to different things, different people and experiences. And so right now, that's really what I'm trying to focus on is having more intent in how I'm spending my time. And legacy is something that has been coming up a lot with me as well lately. I mean, again, I'm just on that other side of like partying in my 20s, right? And thinking about how I want, like what I want to leave behind. I don't know if you follow Ed Milet, I love his book. I love his podcast, but he has this section in his book that I wrote. I have this big board. It's actually right behind my camera, but I have this big board that has this like section from his book. And I want to kind of leave you with this because it hit home with me and I review it very often. It's kind of my circle back to point to say like, am I living with intent? But he says like begin with the end in mind, the end of your life in mind, not just like the end goal of what you want to achieve, but the end of life in mind. Who do you want to be when it comes to the end? What do you want to have accomplished when you look back, when you're at the end, like your deathbed or whatever, like the end of life? What do you want to have accomplished? Who do you want to have helped? What does that look like? What's truly going to matter to you in the end? Is it going to be the new car that you bought? Is it going to be the amount of time that you spent, at your computer 4 extra hours into the evening when your spouse or significant other wanted to hang with you, whatever. What emotions do you want to have when you look back on the end? What are those memories going to be? What is your legacy? And one of the things I kind of added to it is once my parents have passed on, will I be honoring them, their life, their dedication to me? Will I be honoring them with how I'm living, how I'm showing up, and how I'm serving, and just experiencing my life? And so I read that often, and I try to circle back to it to just ground me a little bit more and remind me that we're all going to fucking die one day. It's going to happen. And so how am I spending my time, and how am I connecting with others, and it, creating a positive experience for other people while also creating a positive experience for myself so that I can show up the best version of myself for the people in my life. So that's my focus right now. Yeah,
I think
it's a
that's
journey for sure.
very well said and well spoken. And that's a great thing to try
Thank
to
you.
achieve.
Yeah, thank you.
So I have a very similar, like, I guess just lock in on anything. It could be the dumbest thing, like video games or sport, or it's just something. It's just like I dive right in, and then everything else gets blocked out, and then like next thing you know, your spouse is not happy with you because you dove too hard into it. I do that with my current business and stuff as well. But
Yeah.
it's cool that you picking things that can actually change and like trying to see the bigger picture and just absorb and enjoy life, because when you're focused in like that, you don't see the small details in life, and you don't get to
Yeah.
see the the pine needles on a tree and thing, because you're just trying to get from one spot to the next and at the fastest possible. So that's a great goal.
I've started walking. It sounds so weird. There's a trail here in Town Lake that I have run. I've lived here for 17 years and I've run on this trail countless times over the years. But I've never, unless I was with a friend, we're just going for a walk, I've never just gone and walked it like on purpose, just by myself. And I've been doing that. I've added it in on my Monday. So I start my Mondays. I recently got rid of my morning classes, and I have my Monday is like my me day. It helps me set up. This is actually something I put into practice, like as in 2.5, 3 weeks ago. That is incredibly helpful. And I know not everybody has the ability to do this, but for me, this is what works. But I set my Monday up to where it's like I don't wake up with an alarm. I start my day by going down there and walking, and it frees my mind to really create space for me to take on the week, right? But it's funny because the walk, I when I got out there first, I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna walk. And I had this like inertia feeling like, I gotta run. Everybody else is running. I should be running, right? And it has begun to subside slowly. But I'm noticing the leaves on the trees and the sun coming through and the little kid and the dog, like all these little things that I just would run right past before. And so being intentional with that is, man, it just sets up a whole nother frame, like a whole different mindset for the rest of my week and kind of how I'm viewing my life at this period. So yeah, it's a journey, but it's so worth it. I find myself in better harmony. Yeah.
Yeah, it's I kind of miss one thing. I used to go when I was doing 75 hard, I was running like constantly, like 10, 30 kilometers a day, and then my 45-minute workout. But I couldn't get my daughter to sleep because she was having sleep problems till like 10, 11 o'clock at night. So I'm like, well,
Mm.
my running started at 11 at night. I'd run 10 or 30 kilometers at middle night. So it's sometimes it'd be like 2 in the morning and I'm out there running and it's like minus 20, minus 30 degrees. And
Oh
I'm
my
just like,
gosh.
but what I really miss is like, I'm in town, but you can see all the stars, sometimes the northern lights, and
Oh
running
man.
through. And there's like, I always go and I'm like, I just listen to my podcast and sometimes I'm like, no motherfuckers out here right now. He's like, just me. I'm the only one out here. I was always like, but I'm just like, I really enjoyed being able to like look and there's no like cars around, so you didn't really have
Mm,
to worry about when you cross a road. I'm like looking at the stars and the things at night, and that was really
solitude.
something I
Yeah.
missed. But I know it's not healthy being running that late at night.
Probably not the best option, but
But
you were doing a goal. It was a short-term thing.
yeah,
Yeah, that's
yeah,
funny. But
I did
it's a
it for
different,
like
you chose that perspective on
yeah,
seeing the stars.
yeah, I did it for like 100 and some days straight. So
As impressive. And I don't think you'll ever see me do it, but I have respect for those who choose to do it. That's all.
yeah, to torture themselves.
Yeah.
But yeah, the
Oh
last
man.
question is what are some books or podcasts that really changed your life or that you really enjoy and think that people should try to listen to?
Man. So my very first, I've always recommended this over the years, is um well, and of course I'm gonna blank on it. Jocko Willink's, oh my gosh.
Extreme Leadership?
Extreme, thank you. Yes, Extreme Ownership. Um, that was a big game changer for me when it came to shifting out of a victim mindset. So I highly recommend, highly, if you're like, I don't know, if you're just one of those people who feel like, God, the world is always just shitting on me, like go read that book. It's amazing. I love that book. Love that book. I will reread The Alchemist often over different periods in my life, and I get something from it every single time. Oh man, that's a powerful book for sure. Um, Podcast people that I listen to, I follow. I love Ed Milet. The Mind Pump guys, of course. A little shout out to y'all. Andy Grammer actually has a relatively new podcast that I just, man, I love him. He's probably one of my favorite people on the planet, and I highly recommend. Actually, one particular episode is he does an interview with Mike Posner. I'm just gonna leave it at that. Fucking go listen to it. It's amazing. And then I would probably also say Matthew McConaughey. Like he's a incredibly unique human being. So those are the ones in my foresight right now that I can think of. Um, but yeah, I think that's some good starting places. Yeah,
Oh, awesome. I appreciate that. Yeah, I've
for sure.
read Extreme Ownership and The Alchemist. And my Alchemist book is it may have gotten wet the one day. It was in the boat with me. And
Oh man,
so now it looks like a real like it has cool texture on the book anyways, but now it's like it looks like it's like 100 years old.
it looks like you've been reading it all tons and tons of times. Yeah,
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, it's been a
that's a
pleasure
good
having
thing.
you on. If some people want
Thank
to find
you.
you and figure out where you are, how can they do
Sure.
that?
Yeah, so on Instagram, I'm just at trainer.claire. Facebook, I'm Claire Donahoe, Donahoe. You can follow me on the socials there, and I have links in my bio and whatnot. But yeah, Justin, thank you so much. This was like, it was truly an honor and a privilege just to spend this time with you, to share this space with you. I really genuinely appreciate it. And I'm excited to see how things continue to develop in both of our worlds, and maybe we can revisit this like in a year and catch up and see how things are going. That would be awesome.
Yeah, it was a pleasure. And I'm excited to see how this goes and everything in your journey as well. So
Thank you.
I'll talk to you soon.